When 51-year-old Army Captain Abraham Johnson arrived home after a deployment, he discovered his daughter dozing off on the kitchen floor. He would make retaliation in kind, or worse, if he learned that his wife, the girl's stepmother, had coerced her into it. Captain Abraham Johnson yearned to get home immediately. He spent more than 8 months abroad and struggled to communicate with his family on a regular basis. Up until the time that American troops were finally withdrew from Afghanistan, he served there 4 times. Abraham was a decorated officer who was well liked by his friends and members of the military. He frequently claimed that his Afghani soldiers served as his second family. But Abraham was already older than 50, and the more the years went on, the more he yearned for his actual family. He performed his duties, but he was no longer in the same frame of mind as before. He had to spend so much time away from his wife Marie, daughter and stepchildren Emma and Henry. And his biological daughter was just 3 years old when he remarried, and Marie already had 2 older kids, whom he welcomed into his household with open arms. Communication through the phone or the internet during his final shift in Afghanistan was exceedingly sporadic. I occasionally had to be content with a brief video call. Abraham threatened to skip home until the military left Afghanistan in one of these calls. However, the man was freed 2 months ahead of schedule, and he was very glad to return home. He was currently making his way back to Florida, where he lived. He also didn't think he'd ever see his wife, son, or daughters again. Didn't mention it would arrive soon. I wanted to surprise him, but little did he know that when he returned, he would be rendered speechless. Abraham didn't even bother to pick up the bags as he parked the car. She approached the front door at a young hour while beaming broadly and walking with tears in her eyes. Although he yelled for his wife and daughters, he could not hear any commotion coming from the house. "I'm calling, honey," he shouted. "I'm back," while looking for the keys. When he didn't hear back, he looked into the garage and discovered that there was only his car there. Did they leave? They would be in for a big surprise when they arrived home if they weren't at home. He would be inside, sitting on the couch, drinking a beer, and watching television. He finally succeeded in opening the front door, but when he yelled for everyone, no one responded. The home was far too quiet. He dialed again, and it took a few seconds before he heard a very frail voice respond, "Daddy, I'm present," he replied. "And where are you?" The officer was alarmed by the voice's low pitch. Although he was aware that it was, and he was surprised by how quiet she was speaking considering how happy and talkative she was in general. He checked each room as he moved along the house's main hallway. None of them contained somebody. He then arrived in the kitchen, where it appeared that the door was locked. He had to use all of his physical might to crack it open. There was Anne, sobbing. She hurried over to give him a bear hug. The girl sobbed and was merely relieved that he had returned. She would say, "I missed you so terribly." Abraham didn't understand what was happening. He had previously been abroad for longer periods of time, but he had never returned to find his daughter in such condition, not even when she was a very small child. He noticed a mattress on the kitchen floor as he was hugging Anne. He then removed the girl from his chest and inquired as to its purpose. "And are you sleeping here?" Trump stated. The girl tried to speak but was unable to. She again sobbed, her words stumbling as she did so. She received another hug from her father, who also urged her to cool off. The girl cried out, appearing terrified, "Oh, Dad, oh, please." Arriving expecting a celebration, Abraham was suddenly bewildered and beginning to feel afraid. So he asked his daughter to calm down and correctly explain what was happening there using the command voice he learned in the army. He said in a serious voice, "It starts by explaining to me why I was confined in the kitchen, and why is there a mattress here?" After crying once more, and gathered herself, he said, "Don't you see? You leave once more, and I will remain here with them." On her own. Still not understanding, Abraham hugged his daughter and announced that his shift was done, vowed never to abandon her again, and even arrived earlier than anticipated. However, please stop with this. The father said, "Tell me what happened to you," and the daughter started to tell the tale, and claimed that Emma, her half-sister, started griping about having to continue sharing a room with her 6 months ago. Marie and her 2 children moved into the home of the military commander after Abraham married her. Emma would share a room with Anne, while Henry would have his own room. Emma was still a young child at the time and was overjoyed to learn she would soon have a sister. Sharing a room with the family's youngest member made her extremely happy. He promised to look after Anne and watch her develop. Almost all of their childhood was spent getting along with each other, despite the typical conflicts that arise when people share a home and a family. Since Emma's sense of self didn't fully develop until puberty, she believed that sharing a room with her sister prevented her from having the solitude and space she needed. Emma would occasionally gather her belongings and use the restroom alone in order to avoid sharing the room with her sister, but in reality, what she truly wanted was for Anne to leave. Emma has been complaining more frequently lately and has grown resentful of Anne more and more. Donald's daughter and stepdaughter were still young and had not engaged in any significant physical altercations around the bedroom on his first 2 abroad assignments. They had grown by the 3rd time. One day, Emma chose to spend the night in her room with her boyfriend because no one else was home. The pair were shocked and ashamed when Anne unexpectedly entered the room 15 minutes later, and was stunned to see her sister and her boyfriend there by themselves because she hadn't expected to see anyone there and didn't want to interrupt anything. The youngest, blushing with shame, mumbled, "Oh, I'm sorry, Emma. You didn't tell me anything. I didn't know anyone was here." Emma lost control. He yelled at his sister, urging her to stop being such a jerk to her and to knock on the door before entering, and retorted that she hadn't anticipated being in the house and that the room belonged to her as well, therefore she had the right to enter at any time she pleased. "Living with you is the worst thing that has ever happened to me," shouted a furious Emma. "I hope you will go right away," and sprinted down the stairs while sobbing. She wailed and buried her face in the couch cushions, furious at her half-sister's comments. Emma has never been treated this way despite their many arguments and the fact that they both knew she desired more privacy. Emma was in the room with her boyfriend when Marie arrived a few minutes later and noticed the girl crying, and didn't mention anything. Instead, she just said that they had fought and that Emma wanted her out of her life, and had anticipated Marie speaking to her daughter, but all she did was sigh and say, "Sometimes I wish you would disappear too, just like your father," before silently leaving the room. Only the passage of the days helped Anne's confusion and sense of being out of place. After that day, the 2 stepsisters never again communicated in such manner. They had friendly exchanges when Abraham was at home. Emma was chilly or neglected, and while he wasn't around, because she believed he already had too many obligations as an army captain, the girl had never brought this up to her father. He had his heart family as well as his military family, as Abraham always emphasized, and also believed that all of her sister's issues could be resolved without the help of her father. And was mistaken, though, as would soon be found out. Everything culminated when Abraham Johnson traveled to Afghanistan for the final time. The eldest son of Marie, Henry, took the decision to go on a trip with his girlfriend and made it plain to all the female guests that he didn't want anyone to occupy his room. Everything he had would remain there until he returned. He locked the door and removed the key without alerting anyone. Even Marie didn't have a copy. Contrarily, Emma didn't wait a week before ramping up her public criticism of Anne. Simply put, she wanted the space to herself. He tried to counter by saying, "But I don't have a place to sleep, dress, and do everything." Swivels around. "I came here first, it's my right," the sister retorted, sleeping on the couch. "Amazing, Emma. We were friends, you said, so why do you treat me like that?" And lost it. "I've had enough with you sticking close to me. It sucks not having any of stuff because of you," Emma cried for the entire house to hear. I want my space, my belongings, and my mirror." While yelling, she took her sister's belongings out of the room and flung them in the hallway. Marie noticed the noise of the collision and hurried up the stairs. "I am being expelled from my own room by Emma." The girl pleaded with Marie to assist her, but Marie simply turned to face her legal daughter and stated, "I won't be getting into jail for you two. They can resolve themselves and are extremely large." Anne's expression filled with despair as she heard this, and Emma laughed. She was being vicious and relishing it, and pleaded with Marie to let her remain in Henry's room, but the stepmother refused, saying she wouldn't cause a quarrel with her son and that even if she could, she didn't have the key. For the following few weeks, Anne struggled to sleep on the couch while experiencing agonizing back agony. She had oftentimes considered telling her father about what she was going through, but Marie always stopped her by reminding her that Abraham was on a mission in a foreign country, surrounded by a myriad of hazards and jobs. "Do you honestly believe it's appropriate to worry about such foolishness for your father while his life is on the line?" The stepmother advised Anne, "You should address this problem yourself and show him that you are not a weakling." That day, the girl sobbed a lot. She didn't know why this was occurring, and she felt useless and weak. He greatly missed his father and lacked the power to confront anyone in that house. His father was away and very busy when she needed him. The girl didn't believe she had a right to add to the captain's burdens. Abraham was disgusted and guilty as he now listened to Anne's complete account. He had treated Emma and Henry as if they were his own children ever since he married Marie and began living with them. As an army captain, Abraham was rigorous but devoted to the people he cared about. She was aware that disagreements among the females were a possibility, but she didn't anticipate that things had come to that. More than that, he didn't understand why his wife had taken no action to make things better while he was away. And he felt bad for missing all that was right in front of him. Finally, he questioned Anne, "And where are Marie and the others now?" The girl replied that they had flown 4 days prior to meet Henry on the beach to celebrate Emma's birthday. However, that was a private matter for their family, as Emma's father, Marie's ex-husband, would also be present, and was thus dozing off in the kitchen. "Marie locked me up here and left. I can have some sandwiches and whatever is still in the fridge. She threatened to lock me in here in order to prevent me from looking through Emma's belongings or attempting to reclaim my room. I already yelled, but nobody responded." The girl continued, wiping all the tears from her eyes once more. "Our phone rang in the living room, but I couldn't go out to answer it. Then they heard a call coming from the door of the living room. A woman in her late 50s was on the other side when Abraham went to see who it was. She introduced herself as Fiona and said, 'Honey, it's me,' and identified Fiona as a neighbor who had recently moved down the street, but Abraham was unaware of her existence. Fiona was incredibly welcoming and accommodating. When he first met Marie, he thought it was really odd that the little child in the home slept on the sofa. Since then, he had started asking Anne if everything was well and if she needed anything whenever he passed by the house or ran into her. Then, Abraham opened the door and identified himself as the father of Anne and the husband of Marie. She was holding a plate with a cover in her hands. "Hello. Your new neighbor is Fiona. Although I haven't seen any cars in this driveway recently, I have heard noises. No one picked up when I called. I made the decision to bring in this lunch now that I could see a car here." "She is?" When Abraham understood the woman's intentions were good, he allowed her inside. She ran to hug and asked what had occurred after noticing that she was all disheveled, had red eyes from sobbing, and appeared frail and sickly. She was then given the full story by the father and daughter. Despite the fact that Fiona recognized there was a problem and had occasionally considered calling social services, she refrained out of concern that she might get involved prematurely and make matters worse. In any case, the girl had never spoken to her, and consumed the food her neighbor had provided as they conversed. It was the first supper he had genuinely enjoyed in a few days. Fiona thanked Abraham for his assurance that everything would be taken care of, and he thanked her for her worry. He started to consider what he would do with Marie and her kids as soon as the woman left. 2 days later, Marie brought Emma and Henry back to their house. When they got there, they were unable to maneuver the car into the garage. The couple's mattress was one of 3 on the front yard. There were also other items and clothing belonging to Marie and her children strewn about the entrance. They were shocked when they saw that. Marie was upset and believed her stepdaughter was to blame when Henry made an idiot face and Emma covered her mouth. "That idiot must have gotten out and done all this," someone said. "And I'll get paid." The woman charged into the house while screaming. He encountered her spouse when he opened the door rather than the girl. That while relaxing on the couch, watching TV, and holding a beer in his hand, he was patiently waiting for her. "Hello, Marie. Finally, you've arrived," he asked with a serious expression on his face, but without raising his voice. "Performed you like the straightening up I did about the house?" The wife wanted to know when he arrived because she didn't anticipate seeing him there. "I chose to surprise my family after receiving an early discharge from my mission. But I believe you were the one who left me a surprise when I arrived, right? And not a very nice one," he continued. The heartbeat of Marie accelerated. She attempted to talk but struggled to find the right words, so Abraham Johnson interrupted her. "I am already aware of everything that took place while I was away. Nothing further needs to be explained. Marie, I'm very disappointed. Together with you, Emma, and Henry." The army captain exclaimed, "People I thought were my family. Donald, you can't treat us like this. Let's sit down and speak. You cannot abandon us in this manner." The female inquired, "Where are we going?" The spouse then made the announcement that and was now back in her room. He also made it obvious that he wasn't throwing the other 3 out of the house. What sort of a man did they really believe he was? And slept in the kitchen for 4 days. You will now put the mattresses in the garage and sleep there as a result of what has happened. He said, "I think it's fair." Henry and Emma screamed back that they wouldn't do anything like that. "Donald, this is absurd. Will you let your wife and stepchildren to leave the house?" In defense of her kids, Marie questioned, "Are you insane? The wife I believed I had was a fabrication. And I'm not going to give someone a second opportunity who has been lying to me all this time," he added. Then, in the most stern voice he could muster, Abraham cautioned that they had all breached his trust by leaving his daughter alone herself and that the house was already his before he even realized it. They ought to leave if they didn't want to spend a few days in the garage. Emma started sobbing onto Henry's shoulder at that same moment. Even though Marie knew it was her last chance, she refused to bend to her husband's wishes. "Donald, you'll notice. I'll accept every money you have to give me for this. You'll regret it," the wife yelled. Abraham answered softly, "No, you won't steal anything else that's mine. I already notified the police and my attorney what you did to my daughter on the phone. Even a witness is on hand. Marie, what you did was abuse and false incarceration. So gather your things and get out of here before the situation gets even worse for you," said the man, turning to go upstairs and stay in the room with and from where they could see Marie, Emma, and Henry gathering their clothes and belongings below, putting them in the car, and leaving some time later. In the weeks that followed, Abraham gave and his complete attention. The girl continued to receive visits from Fiona, the new neighbor, practically daily. She was committed to ensuring and didn't experience the trauma brought on by what had occurred. They soon discovered that Donald's complaint had a result. Marie had to reach a deal with a prosecutor in order to avoid being detained. She paid a fine, would have regular supervision by a social worker, and was obliged to undertake hundreds of hours of social work. Abraham started the divorce process, and all the papers were shortly signed. He was aware that from this point forward, and who was all that was left of his family, would have his undivided attention. He would no longer be required to fulfill military obligations outside the nation. Fiona visited the house frequently, though. We occasionally bring pastries and cakes, and other times we serve pasta and lasagna on plates. They were initially intended only for the girl. However, she quickly began preparing for Abraham as well. She was preparing food for the three of them in an instant. Abraham and Fiona were becoming more intimate, and was once more a happy and chatty person and didn't appear to be recovering from the trauma. She was the first to suspect that perhaps a brand new family was developing. If you liked the story, I ask you to please leave a like, and this other video that is appearing on the screen now will probably move you too. Good session, and until the next video.